Veterans Choice Act of 2023 was introduced in January of 2023 by a specific legislator out of Louisiana. Currently, the legislation has been pending now for about going on 8 months, which is absurd. It shows how long it takes anything to be even considered in Congress. To me, it looks like it may or may not die on the vine, so to speak, because there is zero news coverage right now about this topic, which is wild to me. I guess it's because there is less coverage of military veteran related topics for some reason. The news cycle's moved on to who knows what they think is more interesting. There's tons of scandal going on all the time at Veterans Health Administration, and I'm sure the larger organization, and with their Office of General Counsel, aka their lawyers who defend indefensible behavior. So I don't know why it's not being covered in the news media. I did a search for it, and I was really shocked to see the only news was from the politician's website who created the legislation in the first place. And I signed up for Congress.gov updates to receive notifications and alerts about this or related legislation, because I've never done that before because it seems like such an ordeal having to create a Congress.gov account, but I did do it. It was fairly simple. I hope that it works. I'm sure I'll say something about that in the future. In the meantime, though, Veterans Choice Act of 2023, basically, I'm a little confused about the details of it, but my understanding is it'd be a very limited number of people would be eligible for it, despite the propaganda title. It's really misleading. And it would be focused at eligible military veterans that would be like service-connected due to disability of some kind, would be Purple Heart. I'm assuming Medal of Honor winners would automatically be eligible, but I'm not sure. But you'd have to be eligible for Medicare is what the politician's website said, although I could not find that in the actual text, which was linked from the politician's website to the actual full, legislation. It didn't say that in there that I saw. I could be missing it. It was 7 pages long, roughly. I didn't quite analyze the last sixth or seventh page, so maybe it's buried in there somewhere and I missed it. I'm not sure. But if you have to be eligible for Medicare, the eligibility I looked up was like age 65 or older, and then other certain special conditions. And that seems like a very limited number of people would be eligible. And so I feel like a lot of this legislation is kind of smoke and mirrors and propaganda of saying, oh, look, we're helping the veterans. Look what we're doing for the military community, blah, 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 blah. Vote for me. I'm amazing. But in reality it's always this bait and switch. And so in this case, it looks like if it were passed, it would only be a very tiny number of elderly veterans mostly that would be eligible to use TRICARE Select instead of Veterans Health Administration. An even smaller number of those military veterans would be interested in choosing that. And the reason for that is twofold. One, some people are creatures of habit, and no matter how bad Veterans Health Administration is, may want to stay there over going somewhere else. And two, money. Veterans Health Administration, for a number of these veterans, they wouldn't have to pay money out of pocket to go receive their questionable medical services that they're receiving quality-wise over there. And if you go to TRICARE Select, you absolutely will have a cost-sharing requirement. There'll be money out of pocket, and those names may be referred to as deductibles, co-pays, just having to pay things for yourself altogether. So that's like the con, and that's something that a number of veterans would not be wanting to do or able to do for themselves. Now, if they expanded this eligibility out to anyone that's eligible for Veterans Health Administration medical care could also be eligible theoretically, hypothetically, for TRICARE Select as an example, if that were to be the case in the future. I actually thought about this tonight, and I decided to get on the live and mention it here. I 100,000% would opt in for that. And the reason for that is so many reasons. I can't stand Veterans Health Administration. It's been the bane of my existence for many, many years now, almost, I think, like a decade. I've never been, it's just, I worked there. It was a nightmare. And I learned a lot about how bad it really is. I was a patient there. a little bit, not a lot, but enough to understand that it wasn't a viable option. And it wasn't good for my health to be in constant conflict with an organization that wants to actively work against the military community at every single turn instead of with the military community. And it has their own agenda they want to advance instead of the agenda of what's in the best interest of the military community and the members and all of that. So I would opt in to leave Veterans Health Administration permanently, which is what this option would do for someone eligible according to what the legislation is saying and the politician who created it saying. And I would go through Department of Defense, TRICARE Select if I had the option, and just deal with whatever I have to deal with on the financial side of it. Because my view personally is it's better than having nothing at all. And right now, even though I'm supposed to be eligible, I don't go there because it's a nightmare and it's an impossible situation, and there's no choice in the matter about that. Now, I really see this as being kind of a weird situation because they've been talking, politicians in Congress, for a while now about having a choice where you'd be either or. You get your healthcare through Veterans Health Administration, one of the three main arms of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, or you would get it through Department of Defense, like a TRICARE system, like Select. This is the most specific version I've heard of it, though, thus far being thrown out. And the first time I've seen legislation actually drafted about it at all. And so for me, some people don't want to be cut off and have to do the either or. To be told that I'm never going to hear from Veterans Health Administration again and have to deal with them again would be like music to my ears, the sweetest sound in the world. I would love to never have to hear from Veterans Health Administration or have them involved in my medical care in any capacity ever again for all of eternity. Like, this would be the perfect situation for me. This would be great. Now, the enrollment fee, according to legislation, would be paid for mandatorily by the Veterans Health Administration monies. But then the eligible military veteran person would be required to pay all these out-of-pocket fees, which is where it would get very expensive very quick, potentially. It's not for everyone, but I do feel like this is something that I would choose if given the choice. Another kind of layer to this, though, is the fact that their TRICARE Select is great about shifting cost burden onto the insured. And so this would be a way for the government potentially to get out of paying for healthcare that's needed for the military community, which is just kind of wild to me. And I definitely could see some very elite, aristocratic type people championing this, because they don't want to have to support the military community's needs in any way, shape, or form. And so anything to shift that burden back onto the insured, the patient, the military community member, they're all for it, potentially. So just interesting developments. I do think that at some point, this whole thing has got to reach a breaking point, a tipping point where people are no longer going to have to be forced to go and deal with the nightmare that is Veterans Health Administration and these people, these bureaucrats involved in interfering with veterans' choices, military community members' choices about their health care. And eventually, I do think the time will come where the military community member is eligible for health care. Veterans Health Administration will not have to go there any longer, interface with the organization if they don't want to. I don't know if it's going to take 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But I do think it's going to happen in my lifetime if I'm on this earth long enough, because it's such a bad situation. And with all of us being connected like we are right here, right now, and with just the access to information, we're more connected than ever before in this world. And so I do think that this will happen at some point. And I welcome more choices and more options for people in the military community. I know I would like to have choices. And right now, the way I obtain healthcare is outside of Veterans Health Administration altogether, on my own situation, plan, whatever. And that's it, basically. And I just hope that everything, works out, and that's that. But it would certainly be nice to have options and choices that currently do not exist. For myself over at Veterans Health Administration. So that would be really great.